All right, guys, psychology. This is lesson 1.3, so we're in unit 1, the third lesson. We're going to talk about subfields or careers in psychology. First thing that you need to understand is what is a psychologist. Simplest definition, a psychologist is a person trained to observe, analyze, and evaluate behavior. All right. Inside of that, now we can have all sorts of different careers. So let's take a look at the different subfields or careers inside of psychology. Now, when we talk about psychology, or the subfields, I should say, in psychology, we got to break this into two different groups. The first are those psychologists that fall under basic research. Those are guys that are looking for pure knowledge, aimed to increase psychology's knowledge base. This is not applied to a specific case per se. It's more about building knowledge. We're going to have about 3 or 4 different schools inside that, or I should say types of psychologists that would be working on basic research. The first is biological psychologists, right? These are psychologists that are exploring the link between the physical brain and the mind. They're researching how does the brain control our behavior, or set up mental disorders, or what role does genetics play in our psychology. The second that we'll look at is developmental psychologists. These are psychologists that explore all of the changes that we go through psychologically from what we call from the womb to the tomb. So prior to our birth, all the way up to our death, and the different phases that we go through in our lives. The third basic research would be in cognitive psychologists. This is going to be a psychologist that conducts experiments on how we perceive, or what we think, how we solve problems. These guys are going to focus on sensation and perception. They might do experimentation on memory, problem-solving skills throughout, but again, not applied to somebody's specific issue or development or biology, but as a whole. When we continue on basic research, there is the personality psychologists. These are psychologists that investigates our persistent traits, like what makes up our personality, or the traits that we can apply eventually as individuals. They develop things like personality tests or aptitude tests even. They look for personality traits that may contribute to, say, your ethics, right? Or what's the likelihood of you breaking the law, those types of things, right? We also have social psychologists. So this is kind of that cross between sociology and psychology. But what they're looking for is how people influence one another, right? Group and mob behavior or prejudice. We see how does a rally turn into a riot? What things in society can help us or influence us as a person. We also can look at industrial and organizational psychology. These guys study and advise on the behavior in the workplace, right? So they might look at how a facility is designed to increase efficiency or productivity, how we could affect the satisfaction of workers, right? And they also devise psychological tests for job applicants. So you may go in and do a psychological test to see if you're a good fit for some industry or for an organization, so that they can be more efficient or productive. All right. Now that's going to move us to applied research, right? This is probably the psychology that we see more. You see this on the television and stuff. These are psychologists that studies that aim to solve practical problems, right? So this is now, we're taking those theories and things from the basic research and we're putting them to helping individuals or organizations. And when we talk about these, we talk about a couple of different ones. First, we could talk about counseling psychologists, right? These help people with challenges in their jobs, in their marriages. Perhaps you and your spouse are having difficulties. You would go see a counseling psychologist to help you gain tools to work on your marriage. Clinical psychologists, these are people who treat mental, emotional, and behavioral disorders. So perhaps you have an anxiety disorder. This is somebody that would go and they would particularly help you with your anxiety, give you tools to deal with those issues, help break down those items that make your life better. So they'd actually be applying and providing practical solutions. Now, both of these may administer tests, interpret tests. They provide counseling, even therapy, right? Sometimes in this, a counseling psychologist might do some basic research. They may come up with a therapy and utilize that by researching its effectiveness across many people, or apply it directly to somebody as a treatment. If we can continue down that, we have another one. That is a psychiatrist. Now, a psychiatrist and a psychologist are subtly different, but you should know the difference. A psychiatrist is a medical doctor, and they can prescribe drugs, right? So you may need an anti-anxiety medication. So this is an actual medical doctor, where most psychologists are in the PhD arena. They typically do not prescribe drugs. These often psychiatrists will crisscross as psychology. They'll serve the same way as a clinical and a counseling psychologists, right? And so we have a lot of other specialists too. Other specialists exist in very particular little niches, right? An environmental psychologist will study the effects of the environment on behavior. What is it like to live in extreme temperatures or in a noisy area, and how does that affect our psychology? Incredible ones that you see all the time and probably don't even think about it, but consumer psychology, right? These study this. They're the study of shoppers to explain and predict behavior. Casinos use this, right? They use a lot of psychology on making the place bright, making it difficult to leave, making it exciting, playing to the psychology of their consumers. Along with school psychologists. These are psychologists that work with students with problems learning, right? They administer achievement tests. They begin to establish programs to help boost educational achievement, intelligence tests. They identify the issues that students may be having so that they can be more successful. Along with that, we do have educational psychologists. Now, educational and school psychologists are different. Think of the educational psychologist working right in the school with the students, providing those services directly to students who need assistance. Educational, they work in the arena of education, with studies, and then they help students and teachers, such as teaching methods, providing different ways of reaching, planning out, setting up school systems, not just individuals. There's also health psychologists, studying that link between psychology and our physical health. Forensic psychologists, you see these guys on the stands in the TV shows, right? They work with the justice system. They may evaluate a criminal to see whether they are fit to stand trial, whether they are sane. Sanity is a legal term. It is not a medical term or psychological term. It only has to do with the court systems, but they also will work with police officers or police stations, forces in hiring, running psychological exams and things like that, training. They'll work in crisis management, the very stressful jobs. They may work specifically in that system. All right, that does it for subfields and careers. So if we were to summarize, what are the big three things we need to take away? One, a psychologist is a person trained to observe, analyze, and evaluate behavior. Should understand the difference between basic and applied research. Basic is for general knowledge. Applied is to that specific field or subfield, that specific application. And then careers, there are lots of fields to specialize in. I appreciate you taking the time to watch the video. If you got questions, hit me up. Thank you.